Neural engine. Apple has said those two words on stage since 2017. A dedicated AI chip inside every device they sell. Now here's what Apple never says on stage. When developers run AI on Mac and check which part of the chip is actually doing the work, the graphic chip pins at 100%. The neural engine, the dedicated AI chip, 0. An AI chip in 2.5 billion devices doing nothing when you run AI. And the reason is not that it's broken, slow, or badly designed. It's just that Apple locked it and never gave developers the key. And the story of why lock it, then bet the entire roadmap on it starts with a car Apple never built. Here is what it means in practice. You cannot write code that runs on neural engine. Apple has never published the manual. There's no way in. Not for Google, not for OpenAI, not for a developer building an app in their bedroom. Every single request has to be handled to Apple's own gatekeeper software, Core ML, and Core ML alone decides whether the neural engine gets the job. And if your AI model uses even one piece Core ML doesn't recognize, the whole thing gets dumped onto the graphic chip instead. Think about what chatbot actually does. It writes one word, feeds that word back into itself, writes the next word thousands of times, and the shape of work changes at every step. That's messy and unpredictable. Neural engine is opposite of that. Its rigid hardware is built for fixed and repeatable jobs. So it is logged and it is the wrong shape, which is why every serious local AI tool, MLX, LM Studio, hands the entire job to graphic chip and never touches the neural engine. Not because developers forgot it exists, because they can't get it, and it won't be good at the job if they could. So case closed. Apple sold a chip that does nothing? No, because that chip is running right now on the device in your hand, doing something you have used 10 times today without noticing. But what's it's actually doing? Face ID unlocking on your phone, live transcription, background blur on video calls, searching your phone for dog and getting every dog. Small, constant, low power jobs running all day without touching your battery. It is the most shipped AI chip in history, doing work you never noticed for a company that markets it as exact opposite. And to understand why Apple built it that way, you need one number. What is it? Underneath the branding, the neural engine is very fast multiplication machine. Takes grid of numbers, multiplies them together, hands the result back. On M4, 38 trillion of those every second. That, my friend, sounds unimpressive until you learn the secret of artificial intelligence. Multiplying grid of numbers is all it is. Recognizing your face, transcribing your voice, generating an image. Every one of those is the same operation run at enormous scale. Think of a restaurant with one chef who cooks exactly one dish. Useless for menu, unbeatable if that dish is the only order coming in. Apple built the specialist, then locked the kitchen door. And here is what makes the decision so strange, because another company made the opposite choice completely by accident. And this is the reason now they run the entire AI industry. In 1999, Nvidia shipped the GeForce 256 and coined the term GPU. Its job had nothing to do with intelligence. Its job was drawing triangles fast enough that teenagers could shoot the thing on screen without the picture shuttering. Here's how you draw a triangle. Take the coordinates of its corners, multiply them through a grid of numbers to rotate it, scale it, flatten it onto your screen. Do that for every object millions of times, 60 times a second. Then in 2012, researchers in Toronto took an ordinary gaming card and used them to train an image recognition model. The entire AI industry was born out of a hardware built to make video games look good. Both companies arrived at identical mathematics from opposite direction. Nvidia chasing frame rate and Apple chasing battery life. But Nvidia left the door open and Apple didn't. And that single difference is worth trillions of dollars. Which brings us to last October, when Apple did something it had never done before. With M5, Apple put matrix multiplication hardware inside every single graphic core. Apple calls them neural accelerators. Everyone else calls them what Nvidia had shipped in 2017, Tensor Core. Apple claims over 4 times graphic compute for AI compared to M4. Read that carefully. The dedicated AI chip is still sitting there locked. So Apple rebuilt the same capability inside the part developers can reach, which points to one obvious conclusion. Apple is quietly routing around its own neural engine. Except that's exactly wrong, and this is where the car comes in. In June, Bloomberg reported Apple breaking a pattern it had never since 2020. It's skipping the high-end M6 chips entirely. No M6 Pro, no M6 Max, and jumping straight to M7. The reported reason: Apple had a major neural engine upgrade planned for M7 and decided it mattered enough to skip an entire generation to get there faster. M7 Ultra is reportedly being pushed towards the performance class of Nvidia's Blackwell, the chip powering today's AI data centers. So Apple is steering its own roadmap for a chip that currently reads 0 on your machine. The neural engine lineage traces back to the self-driving car Apple cancelled. A car has to recognize pedestrians instantly, continuously for hours without cooking itself or draining the battery. The exact opposite of what a data center needs. The car died, the chip built for it is now in over billion pockets. Which brings me to what I think this is actually about. Everyone frames Apple versus Nvidia as a hardware race. Nvidia's real moat was never the silicon, it was CUDA, the software layer that lets anyone program their chips. Apple built comparable hardware and locked the best part of it behind a door developers can't open. So Apple isn't building one AI chip, it's building three: the neural engine, the new graphics accelerator, and the matrix unit on the processor, with Core ML as traffic controller deciding which one gets each job. The bet isn't that any single one wins, it's that the routing wins. And one honest caveat, because I would rather prefer you hear it from me. For chat style AI, raw compute isn't even the limit. Memory bandwidth is, which is why M5 is only around 10 to 15% faster than M4 at generating text, despite 4 times the number. So next time Apple flashes a giant trillions of operations number on keynote slide, remember what's really happening on your desk. The chip with neural in its name is idle. The graphics chip is doing the thinking, and Apple is rebuilding its entire roadmap to change that. The question that I can't answer yet is whether Apple ever opens that door, because the hardware stopped being the bottleneck. The lock is. So here's one thing I want in comments. If you run local AI on Mac, open Activity Monitor and tell me what your neural engine reads. Let's build the evidence right here. And if you want the other half of the story, what happens when Apple puts 1.5 terabytes of memory behind these chips, that one's linked right here.